Clive Chapman and Chris Dinnage of Classic Team Lotus have been kind enough to give us some of their time to talk about the team, to talk about how it began and everything that goes on. Gentlemen, I'm looking at just a beautiful collection of historic Formula One cars. How did this team begin? What was the concept of it? What did you aim to achieve when you started this enterprise?
The tricky bit's going to be who's going to talk first, but well, you look at a beautiful collection, but I have to say we tend to look at a bloody great job list, really. We come up here and think, God, all that work to do, and that's what we did 28 years ago.
28 years, gosh.
It was a lot of the same cars, but they were not running. The team happily had kept generally the best of each design type, and that was great, but they weren't in good condition and they weren't running, and we needed some facility to look after them. And Chris and I talked about it and thought, well, yeah, we'll give that a go.
And so who approached who initially to get this off the ground? Was it a pitch, or was it a I've got all these cars, someone run them for me?
Oh, this would be fun. See how you remember it.
I don't know, I don't remember it.
Clive said, I'd like to get some of Dad's cars running. I thought, okay, I'm working at Team Lotus, so I might have a bit of spare time, and then it became apparent, no, it wasn't just in the spare time, it was actually coming full time, but we won't be going racing, it's just family cars. And that was in July, I think, of '93. And then, so come the winter, it had moved on to, actually, I left the team and came to work for Clive and the family. Just on family cars and no racing, and by March we were testing flat out Silverstone with Sean Walker in a Lotus 87, which we raced with him for 2 years. So that's kind of how it started.
Do you still love these cars, or are they, you know, you get the heartache, you get the difficulty, you get the part list, you get the build, but do you still love these racing cars?
Yeah, that's our lives,
That
really.
is
That's
our lives.
our working lives, and all the guys in the team, and the customers as well. There's just something about them that we want to invest all that time and effort. And like the Type 56B, the gas turbine F1 car we restored last year, we ran it once at Goodwood, and Emerson drove it, and we haven't run it since then because we're just so busy. And you kind of think, well, why did we do that? But it was just such a fantastic moment, and Lewis Cullington, the lead mechanic, I mean, he just did such a brilliant job restoring it, and the mechanics must wonder as well sometimes, you know, what's the point of that? But it's just terrific excitement when you bring a car back to life, especially. And then I think taking the cars to the events, particularly for the customers, when they get to race around Monaco, and they do race, I mean, they're not just waving at the crowd, to give them those kind of moments is a real buzz for us. We seem to get a lot out of that, and there's so many positive aspects of what we do in that respect.
Do you feel driven to connect with people and keep these cars alive, or is it just simply that you want them to exist and you don't really mind if people are interested in them or not? Do you feel driven to communicate?
Yeah, I think I probably felt I'd started off on a bit of a crusade together with Chris, and then after a while I realised actually there's any point in doing it if you're motivating yourself. You know, other people might appreciate it, but they don't always appreciate things you expect they're going to appreciate. So then you can kind of get a bit demoralised. So ultimately, actually, it is selfish reasons and selfish motivations which makes us do it, I think.
What is it about these cars which you wish people appreciated that sometimes you think is missed, particularly by a modern audience then?
Well, it's more the effort that's gone into it. the effort that we put into the restorations, and as Chris will tell you, quite often pointless effort on details that no one is ever going to appreciate. But as Bob Dance, one of the greatest F1 mechanics, who was chief mechanic at Lotus in the 60s, 70s, 80s. He says, he famously says, well, they won't see that from the grandstand, you know, which is a good point. And when they were racing in period, it was just get it on the grid, finish the race. Whereas now I'm guilty of, and Chris is guilty of indulging me, and the rest of the team as well, in getting the cars restored to exactly how they should be.
Do you each have a favourite car in the building?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, this will be good. What's
Well,
your
it's
one
that.
then? Okay, yeah, that
Because
makes
when
sense.
I was a mechanic at 24, 25 years old, as a young man travelling around with Team Lotus, and working on the cars that Ayrton was racing, never did I, in my wildest dreams, ever think I'd drive it. And it's just, so there's a lot of personal connection to it. And it's difficult to actually say, have you got a favourite? Because the 79s that day in Zandvoort, when we reenacted the 1-2 victory from 78, which I was there as a kid watching. We took the cars back to Holland and did a photo shoot in late afternoon out on the track, and then when it was at dusk, when it was all over, for some reason we decided it'd be a good idea to drive them back. So the two of us, no helmets, no racing overalls, no nothing, we just drove half a lap of Zandvoort with the same two cars that Ronnie and Mario won there in 78. It was one of those moments I'll never forget.
And you'd restored both of them, and all the effort that gone into that. It was,
Never.
Amazing.
Never forget that. Though.
So obviously the family connection for you, Clive, is why Lotus. Did that passion for you, Chris, grow as a result of working for Lotus, or were you already interested in the brand before you started,
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a rally mechanic. I've looked at Ari Vatanen and Roger Clark, and used to sit in Dolby Forest in the middle of the night with a few mates, going to watch all this stuff, which was now I think is quite bizarre. But that's what I wanted to do. And then when I first started work at a local garage, there was a guy, Phil Denny, who I followed through school and through the same garage and apprenticeship, and he was getting a job to go and work at Team Lotus. And I thought, muddy fields in the middle of the night in North Yorkshire, or Rio de Janeiro in the sunshine. So I had a bit of a turn of ambition as what I thought would be a better career. So that's when I really first started, when I was 16, when I really first started looking at what Formula One was. And Lotus was, that was home.
There weren't many other F1 teams in Norfolk.
There weren't many other teams in Norfolk, no.
I think we could do a better job of telling people what the cars represent. We are a bit guilty of, we turn up with the car and it sits there, there's no sign, there's no film, there's nothing. We know what it is, we know what it means to us, what it represents to motorsport. We're not terribly good at communicating that sometimes.
But you remember the people. You remember the people, and you remember because you were around. And in some way, do these cars connect you to the people that drove them and worked on them?
Absolutely. Yeah, whenever we fire up the 97, we think of Ayrton, and even more for Chris, and Ronnie's cars and Jimmy's cars. It genuinely is a privilege to fire up. John Bowers has been one of our customers for a long time, owns Jimmy's Type 25, and it genuinely is a privilege to fire that car up and take it around the world.
Who's the person who sticks out most for you throughout the history of working with these cars?
Well, Chris.
Can't answer.
Because in 28 years, he's really restored more Lotuses than anybody
I
else
believe you've cleared Senna there,
on the
Chris.
planet.
Yeah.
And you know, it's without Chris getting involved, they wouldn't be in the condition they're in now. And we've really gone way beyond what we thought we might achieve.
Yeah, completely.
Thanks to our customers. 90% of what we do is customer-based work, but when we get the chance to work on our cars, we do. And then often we'll invite our customers to drive them as a bit of a thank you. But if it wasn't for them helping the business to exist, then that just wouldn't happen. And then the mechanics in the race shop, for 20 years, we were more than that, we were in the original workshops, and it was a dreadful place. And they achieved
It's steeped in
incredible-
history, is what we used to tell ourselves.
And they achieved incredible things, and fortunately now, through their efforts, we've managed to build this really good facility.
Yeah, yeah.
And now they've got a proper race shop, and we're able to achieve even more. And
Have you got a count of how many races you've won as a team?
but it's not the winning that counts.
We haven't,
No,
but we have one.
but we do
didn't-
count how many races we finished, genuinely.
Yeah.
And
Oh, of
we
course,
had
yeah.
the most fantastic, pre-COVID, we were doing about 130 race starts a year with customers, and they were finishing about 125, which in historic
Yeah,
Formula
that
One
was
cars,
pretty good.
and for the mechanics, that really was the most fantastic achievement.
The thing with historic cars, you know, in period they used to break down regularly, and the technology hasn't changed because it's not allowed to. Some of the components and the manufacturing process have changed, so you can make engines more reliable than they used to be. We're on top of the gearboxes more than perhaps they were in period, and some of the materials are better. But fundamentally, the design is the same as it was however many years ago. So the unreliability of them is still in there. It's just how we manage it now to make them go the distance. And so much of it is what we do before we go to the races in terms of inspection and looking at the crown and pinion and checking the wheel bearings and checking everything on the car before it goes on the bits that we know historically, because we've been doing it so long, are the most likely ones to break. So that's where we've gained in reliability, because we've run them so long. We know where they're likely to break, and we can look at that.
I think the drivers owning the cars and having to pay if they damage them, that would be a good idea. Maybe we should do that in F1,
In
and it would
F1,
cut out some of those first corner moments. But that does keep them a little bit sensible, and plus they all get on with each other. You know, I think drivers used to much more in the 60s and 70s. Maybe there was less. Well, we'll say there's less on the line. Obviously, it was extremely dangerous, but they really did have
There's
a
much more
camaraderie
camaraderie,
between
yeah.
teammates and teams. Whereas now they're under so much pressure.
What's the latest car you have here? Maybe right at
Latest 1980.
right at the end of the 80s, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, no, not
early
87.
90s, yeah.
Around the corner,
Do you think Formula One has declined or
No,
improved?
not at all. Formula
I
One's
think
amazing.
it's just different.
Yeah.
I don't think
incredible.
it's better or worse. I think it's just different.
Yeah.
And it was different in the 50s to the 60s and the 60s to the 70s. It was different every time. You know, there was space frames with engines in the front, and then space frames with engine in the rear, and then monocoques. And now, you know, Lotus was one of the best innovators in it all. First monocoque, first carbon chassis, first proper aero,
Ground
was
effect.
the first ground effect car as well. So one of the first manufacturers to actually go out and get a different engine other than a Ford Cosworth.
Active suspension. Don't forget the
Active suspension first.
In and out
So-
again. Yeah.
So it's different, and it was different then, and it's different now. So I don't know. I don't think it's better or worse. It's just different, and that's how it is.
I was saying to Alex, but the challenge is similar in a way, and it's amazing how these bands of people and teams face that challenge season on season, race after race, around the world, and it's it's much bigger now. I mean, the teams are huge,
Yeah.
and the money is massive, and the technology is extraordinary. But it's still a bunch of guys who share a passion to try and win a motor race, and that's what hooked my father completely,
Yeah.
and suited his abilities and skills. And it's still people like my father now who are leading teams, and people like Chris who are responsible for the cars and responsible for the drivers, and it's a great human challenge, I think.
Gents, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for inviting us to see the beautiful collection here, and it's carving a path in historic motorsport. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.